are here today to go over the herbal forecast for July's astrology, and I have with me Bonnie.
Hello.
And Suzanne Stone.
Hello.
How's everyone doing?
Well, staying in the shade and staying in the water feels
Yeah,
pretty good.
yeah, definitely important to get
Yeah.
the body fully submerged.
Yeah.
It is Cancer season, you know?
Yes. Exactly.
Yeah, and we're recording on the 5th, which is an interesting day as it's we're just having separating from the Mars retrograde Mercury opposition and also the Sun and Jupiter trine. So we're right in the middle of it.
Yeah.
It's funny when you like look at this stuff ahead of time and you're like, that's going to be totally weird. And then now we're in it right now, that both those aspects, and we're just sitting here recording with you.
We are immersed in it.
But it is interesting, right? Because like you're like what I always tell people about the aspects. You're like, well, did anything out of the ordinary happen? You know, because it doesn't seem weird that we're just sitting here recording with you, but it's the first time that we're recording just for the herbal forecast rather than just the whole monthly forecast.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is an out of the ordinary conversation that we're having. So
Exactly.
it's hard to pinpoint, but you're like, well, did something happen that doesn't usually happen? You're like, well, actually, yeah, something did. You know, even though
Yeah.
it wasn't like monumental. You know,
Right. Yeah.
I have to edit that out. I can't let listeners know that this isn't monumental. Okay, well, do you want to talk to us about today and the 5th? And you know, by the time people listen to this, it will be past, but we can kind of just jump off from here.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like what's going on today is really pretty solidly going to be felt in a way throughout. Because I'm dealing with a lot about the Mars retrograde in general.
Mm-hmm.
Which I guess maybe we'll even, with Mercury kind of leaving the aspecting, maybe I don't know if it will even get more full on or not.
Right.
But I've already personally, I feel like I feel the heat pretty solidly on a lot of levels.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
And I was really thinking about heart herbs that are kind of thorny warriors at the same time, so that we would, during this time period, I think it's pretty easy for our feelings to get hurt, to be really angry, like to take, I've been taking things really personally and I had to step back. So protecting our heart, having a really open, warm heart at the same time as soon as someone does cross the real boundary, have the thorns out, be like, you went too far.
Mm.
So motherwort and rose and hawthorn are three of our heart allies who offer that kind of healthy boundary of what love really is. Instead of just all giving, it's there are boundaries that are really essential. And I think Mars and retrograde are going to help those. We're going to be hitting those pretty solidly.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's like I've been telling clients, you know, you're not going to want to like tell people to screw off or like build safety walls between people, but you have to create that space around yourself so things don't get blown up or, you know, or thrashed, you know. But yeah, I think it's really interesting looking through all of your herbal notes and then seeing there was like this kind of continually there was this I see how Venus is being applied, but I also see there's like a lot of lunar herbs and a lot of like heart herbs, and it's and that's been coming up in my studies anyway, like with looking at the you know, like the diminishing triangles that you see in the Greek magical papyri, or like the classic one that everyone's familiar with is like abracadabra, like, you know, going down to like the single A. And I was looking into what those are referred to, and they're what, you know, in the papyri themselves, how the Greek words are to refer to what those are, and they're called like often winged, or like, and now scholars call them like wing formulas or wing formations, but also
Mm-hmm.
they often use the word cardia,
Mm-hmm.
and call them like heart shaped, like cardia shaped.
Oh, interesting.
And then they use another word that, let me see, I have to get it up here. The other word I don't know so readily. I don't have the other one in front of me, I don't think. But the other word they use translates to it's strange. It's like multiple things at once. It's kind of like bunches or like bunched or bearded or and so it's often translated as grapes, like things that like hang and cluster like
Mm.
grapes.
Right.
And then they'll make allusions to that and like the uvula, like the hanging
Mm-hmm.
ball in the back of our throat.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then also like, so they'll say it's like grape shaped, but in that like hanging kind of like bunch sense. And then they'll say
Mm-hmm.
it's like also heart shaped. But when I looked up like cardia in from the Greek, they mean it in the sense of like the heart as the source of emotions and love. And it's
Mm-hmm.
often used as a synonym for the mind and the stomach, or for any hollow wood or vessel, and also like the pith in the depth of like of like of a tree, like the heartwood, what they call it,
Yeah.
So it's really interesting that and then in your herbal forecast, I noticed there's a lot of like, sometimes it's like lunar herbs to be applied for the emotions, and for like that what you commonly think of as like the lunar capacity, but then you also see it as like talking about the heart, and it kind of goes back and forth. And then I don't know, just kind of noticing that connection between like, where is the heart, what is the heart, and where is the stomach, and what is the moon.
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I mean, it's also been found that our heart is almost like our brain,
Mm-hmm.
as well as
Mm-hmm.
we are receiving information through our heart, which then goes to our brain, or even sometimes to our stomach too. So I mean, those three triads are just like. But the heart seems to be one of the first gatherers of electromagnetic energy, of just really like the feelers out in the world, the antenna.
Mm.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense to like, I was thinking of it as kind of like a tuning and a tonic to go through, looking at like, if you go through the month in the way that you've laid out the herbs, like kind of going through and being like, oh yeah, if you kind of like wash and tune up
Mm-hmm.
these organs in the metaphysical sense, like you'll be ready to receive all this heat and all this kind of like turbulence that's getting thrown up. I saw that Culpeper. Where is it here? When you start talking about like motherwort, and
Mm-hmm.
Culpeper says like there's no better herb to take melancholy vapors from the heart. And it's interesting because removing melancholy vapors would be like removing earth. Uh, and it says
Yeah.
he says it warms and dries up cold humors,
Mm-hmm.
and so then that could be like watery humors as well, and then cleanses chest of cold and phlegm and kills worms in the belly, which would both be like lunar problems. Like worms are very
Yes.
lunar. And so like certainly this month has a lot of, with like everything in Cancer opposing everything in Capricorn, and then that axis getting really just like lit up, and as a preview too for like the next eclipse cycles, and then this eclipse cycle affecting the heart directly. It's totally this passover between, from the heart to the stomach. And that's
Yeah.
like a function of the Cancer Capricorn axis. And then like, and also like he says motherwort settles wombs as they should be, and so that in a way like prevents hysteria, like a wandering
Right.
womb. And that
Mm-hmm.
that comes up again and again, I feel like, later on in the stuff that you mentioned. It's certain other herbs you suggest are like, oh, this like calms the emotions, like, and even like spirits that might kind of screw with you at the time.
Right. Yeah.
Would
Because I
stress
think
you
it's
out.
important for us to access this merchant energy that's coming, because there's a lot we're going to be learning, be it difficult obstacles, but we ultimately want to experience it and be
Mm-hmm.
at a level where we can, with strength, face it.
It's just like this heat. You really can't Like you might as well make the best out of it.
Yeah,
It
like
was your
the actual
candidate.
temperature right now, because it's very
Yeah,
wave.
exactly. And all of these feel like they're not Martian herbs, but it feels like they have Martian warrior qualities to them
Yeah, and some of
because
the
of the thorns.
yeah, Culpeper does give Hawthorne to Mars.
Yeah, I
Uh,
thought hawthorn.
yeah, and it draws out. He says it draws out thorns and splinters, and
Mm-hmm.
that is continually interesting. Like the combination with the rose, and the rose has the
Mm-hmm.
thorns, and roses
Mm-hmm.
always are work out really well when there's like an over involvement of both yin and yang. Like how you
Yeah.
said, like involve it in your magical practice.
Mm-hmm.
Like how like I was looking into like the words like japa mala, and how it's like they're where the rosary comes from,
Oh
and
yeah.
those like mala is like means garland, and so it's like and japa means repetition, but really it means like kind of like uttering in a low voice like over and over, like over a
Mm-hmm.
garland, and
Mm-hmm.
then
Yeah.
later on, like through looking at like different cultures having like in Arabic cultures, like they called their rosaries Ordija. I'm probably pronouncing that wrong, but it means rose garden. And then the
Mm-hmm.
early Latin was rosarium, and then in Germany it was Rosenkranz, like rose wreath,
Mm-hmm.
and so that's instantly something you can kind of do to incorporate rose magic,
Yeah, and I highly recommend people making their own rosaries with rose buds, like stringing
Yeah,
the
nice.
beads themselves, because that's really traditional
Hmm.
rosary, and also would just give the aspect of rose that's needed.
Yeah, and it was interesting that I was looking like rose windows. The cathedral that would have the rose and the Marian rose would face west.
Mm.
And then if something happened under, if you were like going to reveal some sort of sexual secret, even in Roman times, it was called like sub rosa, like under the rose.
Right. Yeah, a lot of buildings in Europe will have roses on their ceilings, like important city buildings, because what's said there is supposed to be kept there as a secret.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like it's almost like in the thorns, nothing can get out.
Yeah. Yeah. Nice. Yeah. And then then like facing west, like the Western lands, like in Egyptian theology, like the lands of the dead. And that's like in Goetic hierarchies, it's said that Astaroth is rules America, and that's from a European perspective. That like
Mm.
Astaroth like is in the west but is headed east,
Yeah.
and that's Astaroth comes from like Astarte and Nana Ishtar, and so it's that same kind of like all the sacred prostitution, like
Yeah.
traditions, like always, even from then, like um, Sumeria all the way to Rome, always like involved like rose symbolism.
Mm-hmm.
And
Right.
that was something interesting I saw too, that like that reemerging in the 17th century in romantic like literature as well as poetry and ballet and stuff like that. There was this character Rosier who is like he would like kind of come in, he would dance onto the stage and like and he would be the one who would chant the other characters to fall in love,
Yeah.
and he was like considered kind of the briar rose or like the male rose, um,
Yeah.
and then I guess that's where they think the word like the innuendo for the penis like prick comes
Mm-hmm.
from,
Oh, interesting.
uh, and that like you're pricked by Rosier, like
Yeah.
and then you get all amorous. But then that was making me think about like how Hawthorne, draws out the thorns and splinters, and how you said to add honey to it, like just echoes that um, like kind of over involving yin and yang, like kind of
Mm-hmm.
being in tune with that. Like, okay, there's gonna because we have this Mars retrograde, then right after it overlaps this Venus retrograde.
Right.
It's good for now, but it's good for the long haul to kind of just be like, okay, let's see what like an overactive yin yang season feels like.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting too because the scent of roses is actually supposed to increase sperm motility.
Oh wow.
So that's also like a creative force. So that's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like
Yeah.
how no matter what um, oats seem to be appropriate.
I know, I realized that, like, once again, I mentioned oats.
Well, you mentioned it at the right
you're not the
time.
only herbalist I know that loves
Yeah.
oats, and it's just a test of oats. It has, they're wonderful.
Yeah, I mean, especially our culture. Our culture is just like go, 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 and it's not about nourishing ourselves or stopping to. So oats really help with that.
Yeah,
Help
and
to ground us.
often like considered a Saturn herb, they like remind us to like take the Sabbath as holy,
Yeah.
not go go go. Like as I guess the current Pope in the upcoming Vin Vendors documentary like really latches on to that. Like he's like, the Jews had it right. We're not machines. We can't work every day. We need a day to just like be calm and be with our family and like play,
Mm-hmm.
So it's like Saturn saying, it's that Capricorn Cancer axis again. It's Saturn saying no and Lunar saying rest,
Yeah.
And it comes perfectly after that, the roses and the hawthorns, where you're like kind of, you can get pricked by rosy air, and then, but then you need to like still stay calm, like,
Yeah. Yeah, and it's so grounding. It gives you the vital energy that you need to really face anything. The oats. And I've been growing them, and just like I go out and I'll just pat them like a cat or a dog.
You have like
and it's just
little
so grounding.
Do you have like a little field of them?
Yeah, I have a garden row of them.
Ugh, that's so cool. I've always wanted to grow it for the milky oats. That latexy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I'll tell you when they're latexy, and you can come over and.
Oh, cool! That's wonderful.
Yeah. Yeah, when I get out of control, Bonnie just administers me.
Excellent.
True, and it works.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it makes me feel like a cat at the vet,
We did that for a cat one time.
Yeah.
When he was going wild and he was a kitten, I like grabbed him and just put the teeniest drop of skullcap tincture.
Yeah, while you're in bed and they're like dancing upon you in their frisbees mode,
If I had oats, I'd use that instead.
The association of Saturn to oats is really odd. You understand the dryness, like if you like have oats in bulk, or and they're very powdery, and then the way the plant grows and where it likes to grow itself, but they're so milky. That Cancer Capricorn axis is so there. I'm so surprised that they're not like Saturn, but also the moon.
Yeah. I agree. I mean, I guess they're probably just the structure of the oak straw is really strong, and that it's so bone nourishing. All the minerals, tons of calcium, magnesium.
Yeah.
So that could possibly be where the Saturnine.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm just surprised they didn't, more herbs in general throughout the traditions didn't like say like, oh, this is that axis of the Thema Mundi, rather than just like, oh, this is this one. It comes from this specific sphere,
Yeah, I agree.
I guess it's all that Neoplatonism, that it's like the descending spheres,
Right.
And then you go into Linden, which is more lunar. Is Linden attributed to anything else besides the moon typically?
Jupiter and Venus.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. It's, quite a benefic, I would say. I've been really obsessed with linden lately, and they're just starting to bloom right now. And I was just in Massachusetts on Monday, and across from the Isabella Gardner Museum, there's this giant linden. And I was about to go in, and then I was just like, the scent came over, and I was like intoxicated, and I would cross the street without even looking because I was just like linden, and then sat under the tree. And you can tell why people had important meetings under this tree. It's just so calming and but like really wise. I feel like it brings out wisdom.
Yeah. I read today that like the Scythian and Arir, like transvestite shamans, received powers from Aphrodite by wrapping their fingers in the bark split 3 ways and wearing it on their hands, and then when they'd say their spells, they'd loosen it. That was from Herodotus, mentions that, but that's more of that like the transvestism there is more of that yin yang combination that we started to see like already. It was that like it's like the kind of like themes, the two themes I was seeing is like yin and yang and heart. Well, three: yin, yang, heart, stomach, Cancer, Capricorn. You know,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
is funny that that's all laying underneath this Aquarius. Everything's focused on this like Mars Aquarius action. You know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I often put linden in a spray for lunar work with mushroom and pearl and sometimes herkimer diamond, and then like mist for the moon instead of subfumigate.
Oh, that's nice.
It's like
Yeah, I like that.
not traditional, but it's definitely like yeah, you know, we've all done that together at some point and in the mist,
Yeah.
you know, and then it's
Yeah.
if you sit down and just like put your body on the ground and then mist the area, you're instantly in a lunar state, you know.
Yeah.
I love putting infused witch hazel in the refrigerator right now and just misting that every once in a while. It's absolutely gorgeous. I've been using rose and it's, I don't know, transformative.
Yeah. Yeah. I've been obsessed with rose geranium actually lately. But yeah, I think I want to branch out.
So then you're talking about wood betony.
Calendula. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, wood betony, another one of our nervines. Just I feel like we're just needing a lot of kind of grounding because of I think a strong warrior is grounded. You know, knows the ground. Like if they're not, then they're easily put off kilter by the sword or the whatever, the wand, whatever it is. So I just feel like wood betony helps us with that grounding, that warrior stance almost.
And then are we still in like the first couple of days of July with wood betony?
Yeah. And I would definitely just call upon that too, you know, during this time period.
Yeah. Yeah. I definitely saw that all of this like is good for the days you said, but it all looks good for the season, you know?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I saw wood betony can be made. I think Culpepper mentions this. It's used. They would make infusions for bathing children and pets who've become bewitched or possessed.
Yeah, I mean, I think I've mentioned it before that Matthew Wood uses it for people who have been abducted by aliens.
Nice, right?
Yeah,
that's awesome.
Yeah. So I mean, same spirits, you know.
Yeah,
definitely taking that. He was saying for like people who are kind of spacey without being abducted, you know, like taking that from the out and bringing that person in. Or bringing yourself back into yourself, like.
Right.
Yeah, that groundedness that you're talking about. It's so perfect.
Yeah, that's so perfect for Mars retrograde in Aquarius because it has all that like in and out and coming from outside and going inside, or the coming from inside and bolting out to the outside, you know?
Oh, he was talking about using it for people who damage themselves through drugs.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, outside of the body, just outside of your spirit.
Yeah, and all those like it was just on Rune Soup recently. The guest was talking about Marian apparitions and stigmata situations.
Oh yeah, I just heard that.
Yeah, the charism. If you look at primary sources, it reads way more like UFO abduction and like things bursting through the atmosphere and lacerating your body. You know that it doesn't necessarily mention specifically the stigmata, just that like something beams came through, like an orb came through the sky and then like hit you with laser beams and cut you up, you know?
Yeah.
Which is, essentially like if we're talking alien abduction and things coming in from outside and messing you up like physically or spiritually, you know?
Right. Yeah. It seems really metaphorical to me in a way. I mean, it can be very specific, but just the metaphor of being, like you said, outside of your body, whatever source.
Yeah. Yeah. I also saw that it also clears the lungs and kills worms. So another time where it's like it's working on lunar problems.
Yeah.
and it's one of the ones that aids in spiritual and emotional confusion, as they're saying. So that's more of that preventing hysteria.
Right.
And so, which makes sense for the eclipse. A lot of
Yes.
trying to give people a lot of tactical information to work with, like in how to
Yeah.
get through this whole retrograde and eclipse, but also like probably the bottom line is like don't get hysterical.
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it seems Aquarian nature is a little bit out of body.
Yeah, totally.
So, yeah.
And so then moving sort of towards the middle of the month, and this brings us to the Cancer new moon, kind of um, on July 12th, which is going to be exactly opposite Pluto and Capricorn. So very like mysterious, powerful, dark, kind of the emotional depths, which makes a lot of sense that like previously the sun trined Jupiter on the 5th and was like, he's like, oh hey, be in harmony with Scorpio, and then after this like does this like sights right across right at Pluto, and gets
Yeah.
two different versions of looking into like the depths and into the darkness, emotionally.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Yeah.
yeah, I think it's a new moon and it's like a heavy new moon, and it actually gets it's like almost just barely an eclipse actually.
Oh, interesting.
The nodes are in Leo and Aquarius, and this is a new moon in Cancer, but the nodes are just at like 15 degrees away, and so 15 degrees and closer of the nodes to a lunation is an eclipse, and the next series of eclipses after these Leo Aquarius eclipses are Cancer Capricorn eclipses. So this is not really an eclipse. No one's going to see it anywhere, but it's just like the shadow of Rahu and Ketu just kind of
Mm-hmm.
swat the lunation. It's like the shadow cat in the sky, like swatting and just missing the moon or just grazing it.
Mm-hmm.
So it is
Yeah.
like this heavy dark lunation is a preview of the eclipse cycle to come after this one.
And so, Suzanne, do you want to talk about juniper and aconite?
Yeah. Juniper is, of course, one of our allies for, especially smudging for um, getting in tune with our ancestors and bringing them to assist us. Um, I feel like it calls immediately for me. It's really amazing. It's also, um, of course, digestive health. Eating a juniper berry before you eat is a really good getting
Yeah, I always
your
forget it.
gallbladder kind of ready. Um, and then aconite, of course, is one of our poisons. So we're not ingesting this. But it's a wonderful way to access the underworld. It's of course from the saliva of Cerberus,
Right.
the origination of it. So, yeah, it's basically it feels like almost like your pass or something sometimes into the underworld.
Mm.
Yeah, and in Goetic work, they both root juniper and aconite both root into Neberos and Astaroth, who are
Oh,
essentially like Astarte and Cerberus. So it is, and then the Hecate traditions just kind of roll right out of the like Inanna traditions. So it is this whole. It still roots into Cancer and female mysteries, but it's given commonly in some of the ATRs and in some of the Goetic practice, like which whose main colors are always black and red and have this kind of like hard Saturn and fiery Mars like activity as a practice, kind of like why it's always like related to smithery, like the smithy,
yeah.
but that these herbs in particular are always associated with the female mysteries. So it's interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then Our Lady's mantle just. I feel like it's alchemilla, so it's a little alchemist. It has been used for centuries. The dew has been used in alchemical tradition. So, and also as a mantle, it just feels like that's also, it just feels like preparing yourself to be in the underworld, like having your tools with you.
Mm-hmm.
having what you need as offerings.
Yeah, that makes
And
a
your
lot of sense.
ceremonial garb.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you don't want to show up with the wrong outfit on.
Yeah, definitely not. Yeah.
Yeah, that was a lot of like when I was first putting the forecast together for the month, that kept coming up a lot, is like this whole, and even for the whole summer, like this whole summer is going to be turbulent, but it's like the whole thing is like you're in the ritual, like
Right.
you're in the circle, and so it is like you want to, like you're saying, just make sure that you have all your stuff with you that you need.
Yeah.
I like also that as the little alchemist, also as a Venusian herb, it
Mm-hmm.
it says that Culpeper says that it's a great wound herb for it's a great herb for wounds in and out, like make drinking and like ingesting and washing, and it dries up humidity of sores and decreases inflammation, and by essentially removing water,
Yeah.
which is interesting because Venus is moist and cool,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and it's kind of like yarrow, that it like the Venusian herbs, like they heal, like they're the antithesis of Mars, like they heal Mars's
Yeah.
action.
Yeah. They're very astringent. Often, this one is Our Lady's Mantle is very astringent, so it's tightening the wounds, tightening the insides, and since it grows in water, it's often a moist plant, shade plant. It knows how to be in that zone. It knows how to exist there, and knows how to offer tips or just ways to be in such a watery zone, or to clear up that water, like you're saying.
Yeah, and that, yeah, it's like Venus, it like attracts things, it pulls them together.
Mm-hmm.
It like makes things congeal and like glue back together.
Yeah.
And so then later in the month, towards on July 24th, as Venus moves into her fall in Virgo and then opposes Neptune in Pisces, and you're talking about mugwort and poppy and yarrow.
Yeah. Those are the ones I'll probably call upon, but any kind of herbs that are people love for Neptunian kind of zones of hallucination, dream state. But yarrow, I always put yarrow in with those because to be a guide, because we want to get lost in it, but not completely.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, we want to get lost, but be able to navigate back out.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so that makes a lot of sense because mugwort again it like roots into the tradition surrounding Cancer and 0 degrees
Mm-hmm.
Cancer, 12 degrees Cancer, where we find all of the Asteros, Nebulos, Astarte, Cerberus stuff again.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like those herbs that get introduced into practice, like through folklore, like through the cycle of the seasons at St. John's Day at solstice, and then kind of arc over this whole part of the year, leading
Yeah.
towards Lughnasadh. They're just like present
Yeah.
in the like the kind of Sothic mysteries, or like the everything that like roots into the flooding of the Nile and like the rise of Sirius, like the beginning of the Cancer season.
Yeah. Definitely. And this is their time too. Mugwort is going to flower probably in the next couple weeks or so. Yarrow right now. Poppy is blooming, and well, the somniferum, or about to.
Yeah,
So it's really like their celebratory time, their flowering time.
yeah, that's cool to think about it as celebratory. I was thinking about that
Yeah.
with like peony also corresponds, especially to to that solstice point, and that was when peony was in bloom,
Yeah.
which is another like
And peony is so
necromantic.
great. The root is so great for depression or feelings of lack of self-worth. It's a low dose botanical, so people take a very small amount. But it seems the exuberance of the summer solstice. It feels like peony would know how to deal with kind of the opposite of that celebration.
Yeah, because it is that axis, that solstice angle, of the theme of
Yeah,
Monday, that 0 degrees Cancer, 0 degrees Capricorn. So you have like a lot of feeling, and that could be like positive or negative, and then you have
yeah,
hard reality, which can be supportive or can be restrictive, you know?
Yeah.
So and then the eclipse itself is like kind of looming at the end of the month. And do you want to talk about the herbs there?
Well, I brought in yarrow and linden again. Um,
Which is great
and then
that you've
also,
already given time to like build a relationship and then we're using
right,
them in the end.
exactly. And then sage, if we're going to be purging, if we're going to have this desire for purging so much, we're going to want wisdom with what we are purging. Like some things, yes, very much, get them out. Um, and then I also brought in wormwood and mugwort, poppy, and black cohosh, just so that it's not only about like a mental. I mean, wisdom is not only mental. Wisdom is complete, but just the ability to get beyond the everyday, so that you will let go of things that maybe you wouldn't have in a just everyday state.
Yeah, I like the yarrow. I was looking at too that it's Culpeper says that Achilles learned the virtues of yarrow from Chiron, and so it's kind of like a time to learn how to heal, you know?
Yeah, it's interesting too that Chiron's mother, Philyra, she was so upset about her union with Kronos and also with Chiron being half man, half horse, that she asked to be turned into something non-human, and it was a linden tree.
Oh wow!
And so
Oh wow!
kind of linden is seen as almost like a grandmother of medicine because Chiron taught Asclepius, who is a father of medicine.
Yeah, right.
So
So the perfect combination then. This is
yeah.
like yeah, great combo for the whole month. That's funny. I
Yeah.
just right before you wrote all this, I started incorporating linden and lunar stuff, and then I was
Oh
like,
wow.
or I knew I had before, but I was kind of like,
Yeah.
it just came back into focus. Like, oh yeah, linden. That's what's up right now. So yeah, I definitely sign off on all of that.
Yeah. Linden also has the heart-shaped winged leaves as well.
Yeah,
A lot of them do.
bringing back the heart, the whole heart.
And that, yeah, winged bract, like
Right.
the
Yeah, yeah.
attached flowers.
That's yeah. I wonder if yeah, winged like the whole PGM, those like diminishing triangles being winged and heart
Yeah.
shaped.
Yeah.
You know, maybe there's some linden mystery there.
Yeah.
And then the finale that kind of comes on the same right at the same time is Venus trining Pluto kind of at the during the eclipse, which is I just think is like a bonus in a way. It's like, hey, here's a violent purge, but you can kind of like really get into the dark aesthetic, you know? Like
Yeah.
it's like you can kind of like be into this, you know?
Right. Yeah.
And so yeah, you have like wormwood again, and then
Yeah. Mugwort, poppy, and black cohosh is a real snake herb to me. Well, it's also called snake root. Is that right? Yeah. So it just feels like that kind of purging, that purging of skin, snake skin, purging of just something that doesn't fit anymore.
yeah, that shedding.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like you said, like we'll be able to like go into Asclepian dream temples, which I think I've kind of been thinking it over, and we tend to just to meditate through the eclipse to kind of be not doing anything, so we're not starting anything at that time.
Right.
But I really have been seeing this one as more, I don't know, for all of the like everything that adds up to it and how big of a long period of like a trajectory of change it's like attached to that it would not be a bad scrying time, you know? It would not be a bad time to try to have your prophetic dreams, you know? Is you don't have to like the next day be like, okay, well now this is the dream that I follow, you know? But just have it put it as a mystery in your pocket, you know, and like compare things off it, you know, as like a kind of let things reflect off of it.
Yeah, I think that's a wise idea.
I wanted to read something really briefly before we go about Culpeper. Let me grab it. Here, hold this for me. Here, talk on it.
Oh, I like that. Culpepper's wormwood assessment. Every boy that can eat an egg knows it.
Yeah, that's like
he always says that. He's like, yeah, everybody knows this herb, but like, I don't know them.
Right. Yeah.
Like, of course I know wormwood, but there's so many that he says, oh, it grows along, because it's regional, and he's like, oh, it grows along these roads, and of course it was written in a different time.
Right, people used to know their herbs a lot more than
yeah.
But that's a great one. He'll sometimes say, like, I'm not, with Hawthorne, he says, like, I'm not going to trouble you by describing this tree.
Right, I know. Sometimes you wonder if he's just kind of done with it. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I guess, no, I don't think he is. I just, Dr. Al Cummins just gave a talk that he posted the other day on folk necromancy, and he mentions that Culpeper actually was famous for, he came back after he died. As he haunted. He was a ghost who was still concerned with his book sales after death.
Wow.
he haunted like his posthumous publisher or something like that.
Yeah.
That's interesting because if you I think if you put either like a hawthorn or an elder stick into a grave site, you'll stop the hauntings.
Oh wow, interesting. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, you'll have to remind me of that later.
Yeah.
So I was going to read the other
on hand.
odd thing that Culpeper says besides every boy that can eat an egg knows it. That's about common wormwood. But then about sea wormwood, he starts saying some really crazy stuff that he's like, this is just part of a big paragraph that just kind of goes into stream of consciousness, which is not normally like him. I'll just cut in randomly. He says, again, near the sea, many people live, and Seraphian grows near them, and therefore is more fitting for their bodies, because nourished by the same air. And this I had from Dr. Reason, in whose body Dr. Reason dwells not, dwells Dr. Madness, and he brings in his brethren Dr. Ignorance, Dr. Folly, and Dr. Sickness, and these together make way for death. And the latter end of the man is worse than the beginning. And then he starts talking about pride and Adam's fall, and he just kind of goes on and on. And
wow.
It's funny because it's wormwood, because we know now that wormwood doesn't necessarily have the psychoactive effects that it got it's legendary for because of absinthe. But when you see Culpeper writing about it, he kind of goes into this decadent poet mode.
Yeah.
To where he's you're like, is this dude drinking absinthe while he's writing this? he sounds like Mallarmé or he's hanging out with Baudelaire or something.
Yeah. That's pretty great. I've noticed that with mugwort that grows by the sea, especially when I was living on the West Coast, there was this specific mugwort, and it was just beyond the dreaminess of the vulgaris. It was of the common mugwort, but had a different scent. I felt like I had to do a lot with the sea air.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen yarrow growing in Cutler, and it just seems so rugged, and it just possesses a different energy.
Yeah, totally.
That can only be achieved there.
Yeah, we collected juniper at the same spot, and it's totally different, but it's obviously juniper. Yeah, there is something, I don't know, maybe it imbues them with this kind of Piscean quality.
Yeah, and the sea air mixing with the heather flower in Scotland is supposed to give a fog, Fogg, and it really helps with the kind of hallucinatory effects of brewing with heather.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, I think the Piscean definitely brings that otherworldly.
Yeah, that's really interesting. We'll have to do a whole other show after we do some research and investigation on just the effects of the sea on herbs.
Yeah, good idea.
And magical and folk practice.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I guess we got to wrap it up for now, but thanks very much for joining us and for putting together these herbal forecasts.
Yeah, thank you for all the help that you're giving me and everyone who takes your advice to heed.
Oh, thanks. too. I love these forecasts that you all do.
Okay, well, we're going to do this. I think we're going to try to do this every month in addition to the regular forecast. So this will be something we can kind of check back in on and have these conversations regularly.
Perfect.
And maybe we can like take calls or something. I just love that idea of like the calling up the radio station and you're like on the air.
Yeah.
The hotline.
Yes.
Okay. Well, thanks so much, Suzanne. We'll see you
thank you.
after this all plays out.
Perfect.